Alrighty, well, let's kick it off with speaker number one. And again, it is Anna Yang. She is a storyteller based out of a suburb of Chicago. She is account manager at Campfire Labs marketing agency, a contributing editor at BankBeat magazine, and a freelance writer. That is a lot. So before pivoting into content marketing and journalism, Anna worked in a fintech for about 15 years as a product manager and a director of customer success. So without further ado, Anna, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much for that intro. And it's great to see everybody this morning or afternoon or evening or whatever time it is, wherever you are. I hope that it's warmer wherever you are compared to where I'm at in a suburb of Chicago. So as mentioned, I am going to be talking about how to manage your content and your time across multiple platforms. As mentioned in the intro, I know as a writer and as a creator, you're usually juggling a lot. You may have multiple freelance clients, you may have multiple projects, you're managing your portfolio, your online presence. So and I do that as well. So I'm gonna talk through how to juggle all of those different balls you have in the air without dropping anything. Um, Hopefully you can get a better sense of your bandwidth, how much additional work you can take on, and by managing your online presence, as I've seen, you're able to set yourself up to take on new opportunities in the future. So, a little bit about me. Uh, I like to think of the work I do as falling into three different buckets. At heart, I'm a storyteller. I write on my own blog, I publish on Medium, I'm on Substack. I am a content marketer. I have written everything from blog posts to ebooks to thought leadership for clients. And I'm a journalist. I'm a regularly contributing editor at a magazine. I'm also very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I publish regularly on both of these platforms. And I work a full time job at a content marketing agency, and I have three kids. So I know what that's like to kind of try to figure out how to fit everything into your day. But this hasn't always been my life. And really, before October of 2020, if you talked to me back then, I would have said that I was following a very linear career path. But instead, my career path looks more like this. I was an English major in college, and back when I graduated, it really seemed like there were two career paths for English majors. I could write a book, or I could work for a newspaper. And I really didn't want to do either of those. They seemed kind of unstable for me. Many of the ways that writers make money now, like through content marketing, self-publishing, those barely existed back then. So I worked in a bank for 6 years, and I spent 15 years in fintech, most of them as a product manager and a director of customer success. Then the pandemic hit, and like many people, I joined the Great Resignation. I decided that what I was doing in fintech really wasn't suiting me anymore. So even though I have expertise in banking and technology, I decided to do a complete career pivot. And when I looked at what I could do outside of fintech, I realized that there's just a huge world of opportunity for writers. So I found the HOTH, and I began plotting my exit from fintech. I spent several months kind of building up a portfolio, and that was a crazy few months because my kids were home from due to the pandemic, and I was still working full time in fintech. But I wrote for the HOTH as much as I could, and along through that experience, I really learned about content marketing and SEO. So by December of 2020, I felt like I'd grown my portfolio enough that I could apply and get a full-time job in content marketing. So then I went to Animals, which is an agency that produces content mostly for B2B SaaS companies. And I was paired with two clients that were a very good fit for me. I was writing a lot about product management and product analytics. So that was great for my past fintech experience. And at the same time. Someone that I'd worked with and known through banking connected me with BankBeat magazine, which is a small publication aimed at community bankers. So I started on as a contributing editor at BankBeat. So I was kind of doing multiple things at one time. But after working a few months as a content marketer, I realized that wasn't quite for me. Writing full time, all day, every day, I was too separated from the work that I really like to do, interact with clients and problem solving. So I moved again, and now I'm at an agency called Campfire Labs as their first account manager. Uh, Campfire Labs works with clients like Dropbox and Asana as a small content agency, and working with companies that are really doing some amazing things with their content. Plus, on top of that, I do take on the occasional freelance client. Usually I take on things that have a technology focus or writing about remote work or the future of work. And I also write regularly on Medium and Substack. And like I mentioned, I'm active on social media. So through all of this and all of those different things, I really created a structure for myself so I can manage all of these different platforms and all of the different things that I have to deliver, and my client work and my own work. So what I'm really going to focus on today is whether you're freelancing full-time or part-time or do other kinds of creative work, you are really your own small business, and it can be a lot to manage because you are basically doing the planning and execution as you're producing work for your clients. You are sales and marketing because you're promoting yourself and your own personal brand, or however you'd like to think about that. You're continuing to build your portfolio along the way so you can draw in new clients in the future. And you are accounting and operations. You're doing all of those nitty gritty details really to make a business run. And so you've got all of these different places where you kind of need to, what you need to think about and where you need to appear for clients and out in the world. And what I've learned from working with writers over the past 18 months is that there are a lot of people who are amazing writers, but struggle to keep track of the deliverables and managing their time. But from working as a product manager for 15 years, I have an insane level of organization. That's one skill that I was able to bring with me from my prior career. So I'm bringing that knowledge with me today, and bring that knowledge with me to kind of my new life as a creator. So I'm here to share some of the things that I do that I repeat on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and on a monthly basis to kind of give you some ideas. I do mention a lot of different tools in this presentation, but there are obviously many tools out there that can get the job done. So on a few slides where I mention tools, I try to include alternatives that I'm aware of. I really believe that there are so many tools out there that exist for different reasons. People's brains work differently. Some are visual, some are very data driven. So hopefully you can find one that really works for you. So let's kind of dive in. Without question, my number one recommendation for managing your time and your content is time blocking. I block off time on my calendar for everything. At this point, I know approximately how long it takes me to write 1,000 words, for example, or how long it takes me to schedule tweets for a week. So I create blocks of time on my calendar every day. It's kind of like having an appointment with myself. This is what my calendar looks like. It's just a snapshot. I have a personnel calendar where I put stuff like dentist appointments and things with my kids. I have my content calendar with things that I need to do. I have my administrative tasks. They are all color coded, so I know what the type of event is. But one thing I want to mention is I'm not managing this manually. I'm going to kind of dig into how this all happens. A lot of these blocks on my calendar are synced from tools that I use, but I review my calendar every morning and move blocks around as needed. So really, I divide my work into three different types of tasks. I have things I do daily, I have things I do weekly, and I have things I do monthly. For example, I know because I have a full-time job, I only have one chunk of time per day that I can really focus on writing. So I need to put something into that particular block of time depending on what I have due. And you keep track of all of this through three different tools. For project management, I use Trello. Um, I split it into different tasks like freelance work, magazine articles, things that I want to write on Medium or Substack. And then I'll schedule those into different blocks of time on my calendar based on an overall due date. And Trello syncs to my overall Google Calendar so I can see what I have planned. But then I also use a product called Todoist, which is great for recurring things. It also syncs to my calendar, but it works more like a to-do that I can check off. That's great for things where I need to do the same thing every week and just make sure that it gets done. And then I also use a product called Reclaim that I highly recommend. It's an AI calendar assistant. So what it'll do is move things around on your calendar automatically. So let's say you've scheduled a block of time to work on something and then a meeting gets scheduled. It'll move that to the next available time slot that you have automatically. You don't have to do it manually. And so this has been great so that I'm not constantly shifting my blocks around as different things come up. There are other products out there like Asana, Airtable, ClickUp, Notion, and Motion that also do a lot of the same things. But really, I think that three different tools are needed and some of them might be related to each other. And that's project management, task management, and calendar management. So if we look into daily time blocking, I know as a writer that it's critical to have an uninterrupted time during the day where I can write. When I first started writing professionally for the HOTH, I learned very quickly that there are times of day when I am not a good writer. For me, that's at night. I'm tired from a long day. I had my full-time job. I had dealt with my kids after school. And so my brain was just mush. I could write, but it would take me far longer to write than if I did that when my brain was fresh. So I have to think about when am I going to schedule that writing block? And for me, that's the morning. And when early morning, I mean, like 4 a.m. Usually I start writing very early. That's just a pandemic leftover that when my kids were home that I had to find time when they were not around, and that was when they were asleep. But then when I also started as a full-time content marketer, I found that that was a time when I wasn't going to be interrupted from clients, colleagues, meetings. I could just write and know that I could bang something out and just be done. And over time, I found that this worked very naturally for my body rhythm, and I could look forward to that hour and a half or 2 hours in the morning. But I also know people who are very productive at night. And so I think part of that is finding that writing time, guarding that time fiercely on your calendar. You may have one block of writing time during the day, or you may have several writing blocks. And I think you'll also want to consider how long you can write before you need to take a break and how long of a break you need. You just may need 15 minutes to take a stretch and come back, or you might need a long break where you move on to something else and then come back. The next block I have on daily is social engagement. It's time that I set aside to connect with other people on LinkedIn, Twitter, and a couple of Slack communities that I'm in. So in this, I'm responding to comments. I'm proactively commenting back to people to maintain my online presence. And so I set aside 30 minutes a day to do this. And for me, that happens to be in the morning between breakfast and when my kids get on the bus, because that is not a brain intensive task. So I can really kind of do that at any time. Next, I have time for client communications. Because freelancing is not my full-time job, my client communications are minimal, but I usually reserve this for the end of the day, like 4 p.m. I'll reply to emails related to the magazine I write for, or if I happen to have a freelance client at that time. Basically, I do that all in one sitting so that I'm not interrupted as I'm working on other things during the day. And the last thing is editing. There are times when I've worked with clients as a content marketer where they just accept my work and I move along. And then there are times when they need a lot of revisions. So part of that is also figuring out how much time per day you may need to revise or edit something. Or that might just be for your own writing, that you need to step away from it for a little bit and come back and do some revisions before you fully send it off. Next, we're going to talk about weekly time blocking. And this is where most of my planning occurs. When I was at the HOTH, I was usually planning which days of the week I would write, since I was writing on the side. And when I was working as a full-time content marketer, I had to plan out my week based on what deliverables were due to different clients on different dates. Now that planning looks more like different submissions to Medium publications I'm in, my Substack, which I publish every other week, the magazine articles that I have due, and even preparation for this presentation went into my weekly time blocking at one point. So my weekly tasks really include 4 different things. The first is logging ideas. And I usually set aside time to do this on Friday instead of writing something new. As a writer, you're probably inspired by things that you read around the internet. Maybe an article grabs your interest, or you see a tweet, or you can think, I can put my own spin on that. So I save all of these ideas using an app called Pocket. And articles and newsletters in particular, I don't read them as I look. If it catches my interest, I save it and I look at it later. That way I'm not kind of getting distracted, but I know that I want this collection of ideas for the future. So once a week, then I read, I go through, I absorb everything, and then I put ideas that I want to save into Trello, my project management tool. So I have a list, and then I decide what to do with them. Do I think I could turn it into my own LinkedIn post? Do I think I want to turn it into a full-fledged article? That process of mining through ideas for the week usually takes me about an hour or an hour and a half, but then I'm saving time later. I'm saving time in not needing to think up ideas on the fly as I work through my online presence as a creator. I literally have hundreds of ideas that I can pull from at any given time. The next thing that I do is write and schedule my own social posts. I use Buffer for this. There is a free plan. I schedule content into different slots that I've created for Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Instagram's not my primary platform, but I do try to schedule a few things per week. And this is where all of my planning pays off. It takes time still to write all of those posts, but I'm not thinking of those ideas on the fly. I'm digging into things that I've already saved. I also make sure to share any links to any of the other content that I've written throughout the week, if it wasn't able to be shared automatically from whatever platform it was on. I also have some automation running in the background through Zapier to repurpose my own content. So when I publish something, for example, on Medium, it creates a new post for me, a reminder for me in the future to pull something shorter, an insight from that piece of content, and to repurpose it again into something shorter, like a tweet or LinkedIn post. That social media presence I found has been very important. I've been approached by people mostly through LinkedIn who see my content and approach me about work. And I've landed several freelancing jobs that way. The next thing I do is plan my blocks for the week of writing. First, I'll add anything that has a hard deadline, and then I work around that. So if I have a magazine article that's due or Substack, I consider that to be a hard deadline since I publish every 2 weeks. I do those first, put those on, and then I schedule other writing around that based on just the time that I have available left. A really big mistake I made when I first started time blocking for content marketing was not giving myself enough breathing room. As you know, as a writer, there are days when you're just not feeling it, or life happens, or you're sick. And I made a mistake of scheduling my blocks so tightly that if something went amok, the entire system would collapse. I'm better now at giving myself flexibility. So, for example, scheduling writing time that's not deadline based among writing time that is deadline based in case something just gets off track. And then once I have my writing blocks planned for the week, I start outlining. I usually want at least my headers and maybe 1 or 2 sentences for each section. I also include links to my own content or other external sources that I may want to include. I know many of you write SEO content, so this would be a way to include any keyword research as well. Because of the type of work that I do, I am able to do this weekly, and it helps to set up my writing. That way, when I get to the writing block for the week, I'm only focused on the execution. But for some of you, if you're writing on a shorter turnaround time, that might be a daily task, something that you do in the morning to kind of set yourself up for the day. So in Trello, my project management tool, I can see the client or the publication, the due date, any notes that I have. I've got some custom fields set up, a link to my draft. And if for some reason I don't get to that piece or something happens, then I change the due date and reschedule it for the next available time block that I have. I wish that the only part of being a creative is actually creating. But until the day that I can afford a virtual assistant, there are a lot of tasks that I have to take care of on my own. And so when I think about monthly time blocking, I have these broken down into 4 big categories. And I do one per week, usually on Saturday. And if there happen to be 5 Saturdays in a month, then I get a bonus day of nothing to do. But none of my monthly items are overly time sensitive. So if I end up doing something with my family or not getting it done on a particular Saturday, it's an easy thing that I can catch up on another time during the month. Probably the least fun of these is my administrative weekend. It's mostly related to my business income and expenses. As much as I can, I like to invoice clients monthly. That does not always happen. I have had weeks or clients where I need to invoice upon deliverable. So then I'm creating invoices along the way. But generally I invoice once a month, and I use QuickBooks for accounting. So I'll send my invoices from there. And then I'll go through my business expenses. I have a dedicated credit card that I charge everything related to my freelance work, like subscriptions to tools that I pay for. Those charges sync to QuickBooks. And then I go through and anything, I categorize them. If you live in the United States and have had the joy of filing a tax return as a freelancer, you know what I'm talking about and how important it is to keep track of those different expenses and any receipts that you have related to those. So I spend basically a chunk of time once a month taking care of those things. Because I have so few freelance clients, I don't have the need for a CRM platform. If I did, or I ever got to that point, then I would probably spend some time going through my CRM as well and making sure that everything was up to date. The second week is what I reserve for what I call my tear file. When I work with clients, I deliver everything in Google Drive, but I also keep a log of everything that I've delivered in Airtable. So Airtable really becomes my system of record. I have separate tables for freelance work, guest posts, one-off pieces, and my own writing. When I was at the HOTH, I kept a full log of every piece I delivered. I included the title, the word count, when I delivered it. And so for freelance work I'm doing currently, I also have a field for a link to the draft so that I have everything. I have had instances in my own client work where I've needed to go back and dig through a draft, and I've accumulated a lot. So it's helpful to have this one system where I can go through and easily locate it. And as we all know, content can disappear from the internet. Clients can take it down. Something else may happen. You just don't have the live post anymore. So I also spend time doing a full screen capture. You could save this to a product like Evernote or OneNote or PDF. I maintain a portfolio on a product called Contently, but I make sure that I have some kind of representation of what that piece looked like when it was published. Then I have my next week where I focus on business projects. As a creator, there's always something new that I want to do or I want to take on. For example, several months ago, I migrated my website from WordPress to Webflow. And so that was an entire project by itself. Or maybe I want to update the About Me page on my website or something like that. So whenever I think of something that I want to tackle related to my business, I keep track of that. I put it in Trello and then I set aside a week to work on it, even though it may not all be done in one sitting. And then the last week is what I call business development. And that is really thinking about new clients that I may want to bring in. So that might be pitching guest posts to publications to kind of get my name out there in the niches that I work in, or reviewing submission requirements for different places, or reaching out to potential new clients, anything like that. Admittedly, this is one area that I could improve on. Of all of my tasks, this is the one that kind of falls by the wayside the most. If something gets off track with the others, those are higher priority. I have to take care of those. But I really tried to work that into my monthly routine as well, is to set aside time to think about the future and potential other ways that I can bring in clients. So one of the first things that I do in the morning after coffee and Wordle is to look at my calendar for the day, see what's on my blocks, and move things around as needed. And I when I say I schedule everything, I mean everything, including lunch and exercise. That may not be quite the level you want to get to. That works very well for me. And then I adjust my blocks as needed. But overall, this is a view from Trello, for example. I know how much I can handle. I know how many blocks I can do in any given day. And so I can move these things around as needed. I can see when I have slots of time available. I can plan for the unexpected, kind of think about a catch up day and work through those on my Google Calendar. Cal Newport, who's the author of a book called Deep Work, has said that a 40-hour time blocked work week, I estimate, produces the same amount of output as a 60-hour work week pursued without structure. Um, and I was a product manager for over half of my career, and I believe this very much to be true. In a lot of ways, being a product manager is like being a creator because you know the best direction for your product and you're responsible for getting it out the door. Um, in some respects, I entered the creative life backwards. I already had the project management skills and then needed to learn the creative side. But juggling those client deliverables and my publication and my social media presence has kind of been a little bit second nature to me. I can plot everything out based on its priority, and time blocking is what really allowed me to do that. So I created this presentation because I wanted to share some of that experience. And I hope that what I've talked about here today has really gotten your wheels turning and what you can create and how you can create a schedule that really works for you. I've included some resources here. I've turned this whole presentation into an ebook that's on Gumroad. I've written quite a lot about this and other similar topics on Medium. And please connect with me on social media. I am a total nerd and I love to talk about project management and time management. So I'd love to connect with people, and I'm looking forward also to whatever questions you have. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Anna. That was great. I actually wanted to kick it off with the first question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because you had mentioned Webflow over WordPress, and that is something that I hear a lot of people talking about right now in the industry. I personally haven't used it before, but I'd love to hear your experience on Webflow versus WordPress, which one's better and whatnot.
Yeah. I actually, interestingly, I wrote a post for Webflow about the transition process and what that was like. And I found that WordPress was just too limiting without any technical experience. Like I
Yep.
saw people just had these amazing portfolios and they'd be visual and all kinds of things. I can't do that. And I didn't want to pay somebody to do that for me. And so Webflow really gave me the idea to have this gorgeous, beautiful looking portfolio with no technical background required. And I knew particularly as a creator that people were going to be visiting my website and that I wanted it to be something that I was proud of. So.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, WordPress can be frustrating. You're in the themes template there, and they all look so beautiful, and then you finally select one, and then it looks nothing like the original theme there.
Yeah, you need way more skills than what the
yeah. Now,
theme can do.
so you didn't have to do any HTML or CSS or coding for your Webflow site. All pretty like drag and drop.
Yep.
Well, that's really cool. We might have to check that out. I hear a lot of companies making the switch now.
Yeah, it's great.
Wally Wynn also says Webflow is legit.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Let me. I'm going to dive into the chat here, see if we can find some questions. And again, if you have any from the presentation, put them in there now. Looks like the first one I see is from Gian. Why call it a tier file?
A tear file? Oh,
a tear file. Sorry. Yes. If I could read, that would help.
I think I actually meant to say something about this at the time and then just got so wrapped up in what I was talking about that I forgot. So that actually comes from historically, way back in the day, writers, journalists, advertisers, they they'd usually get a physical copy from the publication of what they had produced. So it was proof that they had written or done something. And so if they happened to be looking for a new job, they would physically take their portfolio with them. And that was their that was their tear sheet. They had all of these different things pasted into their book. And that went with them. So I borrowed that phrase from that kind of historical knowledge that I need to have a copy, albeit a digital copy, but I need to have a copy of the work that I've done, because I can't depend on it out in the world to still exist. I need to be able to produce it for myself. So even, for example, the magazine that I write for, I save a PDF of what that looked like in the magazine, that I'm able to share with clients and keep in my portfolio.
Very nice. We got actually quite a few questions coming in here. So next one's from Katie. How do you handle boundaries on your time blocks with yourself?
That came from a lot of practice, I would say. I'm better now than I was, but I have this little I have a little cube that sits on my desk, and it says, like, on one side it says 5, on one side it says 10, on one side it says 30, 60. So I'll actually flip the cube, and that becomes a timer. And so if I had planned 30 minutes, I flip the cube to 30, and then it beeps at me when 30 minutes is up. I don't necessarily stop that particular task. If I'm not done, I'm not done. But that kind of tells me where I'm at and am I where I should be. Particularly when I was writing as a full-time content marketer, that was very critical to really know, like, is this going as planned or do I need to add some more time to work through this?
Yeah, it's tough, especially when you have back-to-back-to-back blocks, and then you start going over, and then
that's not a good idea.
Especially if it's a recurring one, and then you're like, oh, I'll skip it today, and then before you know it, that task keeps getting bumped to the next day and the next day, and I think we've all done that, and it can be a tough situation to get out of. Okay, good one. Good question here. How do you stay off your phone? I am so dedicated to time blocks and then don't follow through on them.
I don't have a great answer for that. I wish I did. But one thing I do is I have almost all notifications on my phone turned off. I don't see the little bubble of how many unread emails I have. I don't see how many Slack messages I have or DMs. So I have to make a choice to go into an app to see it. And there is something, I think, about not knowing that there's a notification there waiting for me that keeps me at least a little bit further away. And I have all sounds silenced as well. I do not get any kind of noise when a text comes in or when a phone call comes in. So hopefully I become so engrossed in whatever I'm doing that I forget that those are there. I bet it's a problem. I admit I will pick up my phone and look at it and know that I shouldn't. But having all of those notifications turned off helps significantly.
Yeah, one of the biggest distraction savers I find is don't create a TikTok. Stay off that. That will suck you right in.
I'm trying I am resisting very. I have an account. I have an account for the sole purpose that if somebody sends me a link, I can look at it.
Yep.
Otherwise, I do not go on TikTok.
But then all the other platforms started creating similar types of content. So now I'm getting pulled in on Instagram or Facebook. I thought it was in the clear, but maybe I'm not now. I will say one thing I learned, a cool trick I learned from my old boss is, I don't know the name of it, but there's a couple extensions out there that can actually, as far as limiting distractions, you can actually pause your inbox. It pauses my inbox from 9 to 12 every day. So I get no emails. And then at noon, I get a flood of them, but it at least gives me a couple hours in the morning to get stuff done without constantly thinking about emails. Now, a question here from Kate. I've tried to use digital calendars and such, but I just do it better with paper calendars and written checklists on my calendars. Any suggestions for people who do it better with paper?
Um, there are there are days, especially when my day is kind of actually going off track, where it's not worth it to me to physically move the items around on my Google Calendar. Like it's just not worth it. Like I can tell there are things I need to get done. I know about how much time it's going to take. And so that I do. I have a little physical calendar right here next to me. I will just write it out real quick. I have 2 hours left. I need to spend X amount of time on each thing. And so I do that. I have done entire days before where I have just time blocked on paper. And so I'll just write out, 9 o'clock to 9:30, this 9:30 to 10 o'clock break, whatever. And then just cross them off as I'm done. And then at the end of the day, whatever's not done, then that would start basically your next day. I think that would be a little bit harder unless you kind of planned out a whole week, knowing which things you need to do per day, and just making sure those get done. But I do think that daily kind of time blocking can work just as fine on paper.
And it feels really good to check that off, doesn't it? Do you ever add something on there that you know you're about to do just to check it off?
No,
Okay,
I just
I'm
I,
guilty.
I don't have enough time to do that.
All right, question from Murray here. How do you react slash manage days when things are super chaotic and disruptive, where it completely messes up your schedule?
um, I mean, it happens. Like I have kids. I've had kids that all of a sudden get exposed to COVID and all of a sudden they're home with me or something like that. Or they're sick or anything. Um, that's where I think that like the project management and the task management help immensely, having those tools, because I'll know um, what things I was supposed to do that just I flat out didn't get to, and I'll just move them on my calendar to the next block. I'll know what thing could be sacrificed, basically. In my case, it would be writing on Medium, something that doesn't have a specific deadline. That's going to come off, and a deliverable is going to go on in its place. And if I have to, I know that I don't write well in the evening, but I could if I had to. And so I do have kind of these catch up times where it's like, well, if I really needed to, I could stick something in that particular slot of time in my day and get caught up if I really needed to.
Well, perfect. One cool comment in here from Christopher. Scheduled summary on iPhone for less pressing notifications has been pretty helpful in minimizing time on my phone during the day. Check it out, scheduled summary. Well, that is it for all the questions. Thank you so much, Anna, for your time and presenting. I think that was really, really great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed all the questions. I like talking about this a lot.